And we're back. Today we're talking with the epic Paul Casey. We've been hearing all about how somebody started off in the school system with parents as a teacher and really thought that teaching was going to be apparently in the school system was going to be the rest of his life. Moved into the religious sector, had a terrible dark time when he went through divorce and came out of it on the other side running a very successful business. And we've been hearing a lot about, and you've been learning a lot about how he's a constant learner and a grower, and why he is the right person to work with you if you want to learn and grow. If you're just tuning into us right now and you've missed the beginning of the show, go back, watch the beginning, listen to Paul's hero's journey, and then come back and join us and watch the second half of today, the expert focus segment of today's show. On the expert focus segment, we're going to talk about surefire ways to get your priorities done every day. Paul, this is a topic near and dear to many people's hearts because we waste a lot of time every day. Everybody does. And invariably, it seems like we never get all of our priorities done in a day. We let things, distract us at different points during the day. So before we get into the individual items we're going to talk about today, give us a brief overview of what you mean when you say surefire ways to get priorities done every day.
Yeah, well, I find that most of my coaching clients, if I drill down deep enough for every single one of them, at the root, there's a time management issue. Life is about managing your time and managing your energy, right? So that's really where it comes down to. They either don't know what their core values are and they're not living in accordance with that. They don't know the vision that they're trying to get to and what managing their time would look like to get to that vision. And so what I do is I help them identify those core values. I try to identify where they really want to go. And then there's a gap there between where they are now and where they want to go. So as a coach, I jump into that gap with them and try to help them brainstorm options. Because people who are stuck don't see options. They see black, white. I don't like either one of those. So I try to give them lots of options. I'm an idea guy. And until they can choose the one that they really want to use to grow forward. And then they commit to that. I hold them accountable. I cheerlead them. And along the journey, we just come up with time management strategies that work just for them. So some of these are going to be like global that work for everybody. And then for each situation, like someone with ADD that chases squirrels, we may have to do something a little bit different.
And that's great. And personalization is always the best way to go, whether it's coaching, whether it's teaching, whether it's creating a speech for an event. So in this segment, we're going to talk about managing your time by your values and visions. We're going to talk about what to do every night, and we're talking about making appointments with yourself for every single task. So let's go ahead and dive right in. When you talk about managing your time by your values and visions, what are you talking about there, Paul?
Well, what we usually start out with, and people want to get to the really, really practical time management strategies, like how to use it at work, but I like to say, whoa, time out. We need to start at the core of you. Your values are your core, your DNA. They're the things that you need to be managing your life by. Stephen Covey, love that guy. Rest his soul. You know, he's not alive anymore, but he wrote a lot of books about time management. And so he talks about putting the big rocks into your schedule first. The big rocks are the values that you need to have in your life. Instead, we often push those to the side, and we do the tyranny of the urgent. The stuff that's right in front of us, or the easy stuff that we can just check off our schedule every day, because we get some endorphins when we cross stuff off, you know. So we cross off a bunch of little things, that makes us feel really good. But then at the end of the day, we go, we didn't take care of the big stuff. Like my kids, I didn't throw the football around with them, you know, or I didn't give my wife any time today, or man, the stuff that's going to make me more money, I didn't do any of those things, and another day goes by. So I try to help clients connect with their values first, the things that mean the most to them. Because when they live life according to their values, they have more satisfaction in life. They get more done in life. They last at their positions longer. They're living in, they're not living in dissonance. Dissonance is that musical term like, and then, you know, just underneath it, everybody's like, oh, I can't stand that sound. That's how we live when we don't live in accordance with our values. We live just like a little bit off.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you being a teacher, I'll say an ex-teacher, a recovering teacher, some of my friends would say, the the technique that a lot of teachers use to teach kids how to make sure they get a decent grade on a test, which is answer all the easy questions first and then go to the hard questions, gets so ingrained in people that when they come out into the real world, into the business or the job world, and they use that same approach, what they don't realize is that and correct me if I'm wrong here, what they don't realize is that on a test you have a predefined number of questions, and you know that, okay, it's this time, this questions, nobody's going to add more in, and there's not going to be like more and more and more, just keep getting added in. So a method like taking care of the easy stuff first and then moving to the hard stuff works very well on a very time-bound, limited thing where you've only got an hour to do something, and getting the most done, not the right things, but the most things done gets you more points. Versus in the real world where everybody's going to keep adding stuff to you every day. So that philosophy of always taking care of the easy stuff kind of weighs you down after a while. Am I getting it right there?
Yeah, yeah, and we overestimate what we can do in a day, but then we let all these other things come in. At least with the test, you got the paper in front of you, you got the teacher with the timer holding it over you, and you know how many points are on that. But life is so much more messy.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you say your values and your vision, every time we have a guest on that talks about values, I love to talk about this a little bit because there's values in my world. There's values and then there's core values. There's values that you can kind of negotiate where if you have to play in a gray area, you're not afraid of going to hell for it, and you're not compromising something that's core to your being. Then there's core values that you don't compromise whatsoever. When it comes to what's your perspective on values?
Yeah, I'm really talking about those core values that you just mentioned. Those 3 to 5 that are just so you. They're boy, you couldn't be in a relationship if they didn't share those values with you. You couldn't be at a job if they didn't share those values, because after a while you would realize we're going 180 degrees different from each other. I got to get out. I'm starting to gnash my teeth, or I'm going to the chiropractor, or I'm just always in conflict. I just can't handle that, because when your core values get poked, you really do get angry and irritated. So that's when you really know that you have a core value that's getting messed with, is when you just start getting really restless and irritated.
And how do those core values then align with your vision?
Well, so let's say you want to have, the vision might be that you want to have a great marriage, for instance. So we'll just use a personal example here. And so you say family is one of your top core values. Your vision is you want to have a very fulfilling marriage, a lot of intimacy and time together, and you want to be on the same page, you want to do stuff together. And so with time management, if you keep throwing your spouse to the back burner and you just keep working, and you keep popping open your laptop at night and keep working, and you keep answering your phone and you keep working, after a while you're definitely not going to get to that vision, because you haven't carved out some undisturbed time, some focused time for your spouse. So that's sort of how it plays out.
Yeah, I've got a friend who he and his spouse schedule appointments together to make sure they have time. And
Yeah.
I admit, and he knows this, I chuckled when I first heard it because it's kind of a foreign concept. Because we were on the phone one day and he said, "Wait a minute, I've got to schedule time with my wife." And I went, "What?" And then you come to find out that they're both very busy, very successful, and they
Yeah.
value their marriage. So what they've done is they've said, "Look, we're going to make sure that we schedule time to get together." And it's
Yeah.
interesting you bring up marriage real quick, because if you are in a marriage that's a core value, can you see where core values would change depending on the situation you're in? Like, in other words, if you get divorced and you're in a different period in your life, could you see a core value taking a back seat and maybe not being a core value at that point if you're single, and having a different set of core values? Or do you think core values just stay constant regardless of the situation you're in?
Yeah, that's interesting, because, well, the core value is family. It's not necessarily marriage. So I guess I didn't have to wrestle with that, because when I went through the divorce, I poured my family energy into my children.
There you go.
and communicated with more extended family and developed more of a church family. And so family still always was still that core value. It never did shift.
Epic. And I think that's really key for a lot of people to understand is the fact that a big time core value probably won't shift. You'll just find a different place to put your energy in. Because would you agree, Paul, that those core values are something that should fill you up, boost you up, give you energy, help make your life better. But that if you adhere to those core values, they're what gives you energy and makes your life better.
Absolutely. And back to your last point of scheduling. So I'm a little OCD when it comes to time management. So I'm writing a book on it now, and that's the most requested talk that I have. So not everybody's going to be like me on this stuff, but I will block out date night, with my wife every Friday night, and so it's actually on the calendar. But just to play it a different way, let's say you want to be a great boss and you want to develop more of a culture of family with your employees. So then you would calendar, write thank you notes to employees or write positive message to employees and actually stick it in your calendar. I mean, we'll get to this in a few minutes, but
Yeah.
that's how it plays out. Is the vision is I want my workplace to feel like a family. So how do I manage time? I got to block it out with some tasks that actually get me there.
Yeah, and like you said, we're going to talk about that probably about 5-10 minutes. So people, you definitely want to stick around if you want to hear more about this blocking the tasks thing out. For now, I think that's a great segue to get into our next piece, which is what to do every night. And when I first read this, I loved the fact, because most people just go to bed every night. And they're like, I am done with the day. Just get me out and get me to sleep. But you have a little bit, I'll say a little bit of a different take on that. Talk to us a little bit about what to do every night.
Yeah, so I've found, and I was doing it naturally without doing it on paper, but to look ahead at tomorrow and develop your 3 top priorities for tomorrow while you're still in today. So at work, that means I call it the 4:30 preview, or whatever time that's a half an hour before you leave work. And that's where you stop whatever you're doing and you open your calendar for tomorrow and you just sort of do a preview of what it looks like. And you put in then your top 3 things that if nothing else gets done, you're going to get these 3 things done. And you color code them in red or whatever you want to do with them, but these are the big 3 that you have to get done tomorrow. Then you leave work and you go home and you have peace in your heart knowing that I know what's on my plate when I get to work in the morning. Some people say, hey, I want to do this first thing in the morning at 5 a.m. Okay, you could, but there's just something about going to bed with peace to know what your top 3 are. And research shows your brain starts working on solving those 3 things while you're sleeping, which is pretty cool. So that's
Yeah,
how that plays out.
yeah, and it gives less of an opportunity for somebody to stick in a more apparent priority if you already
Yeah.
have your work set out for the next day, which aligns with the topic I talk about using a touchstone. I teach people to use a touchstone and the fact of it's the 3 to 5 things they need to get done every day to push their business or their personal life forward. This is very similar because you're going in with a list saying I've got to get these 3 things done, and it gives you the permission to say no. At least in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. It gives you the permission to say no to a less important thing because you can look at the person asking and say, look, I'm really sorry, but these are the 3 things I've got to get done today. I can either wait till tomorrow to help you because it sounds like it's important, or I can try and find somebody to help you. I may not be able to find somebody right away, but I can work on finding somebody that might be able to help you before the end of the day. I mean, do you use it in that sense as well?
Absolutely, and you might have to close your door at work if you have a door that you can close to get some of those top 3 things done and teach your staff, your team, that when my door is closed, I need to be undisturbed. Now, you don't keep that door closed all day because people really are more important than tasks. And so I will, even those 3 are big, if there's someone who has an emergency or needs to talk to me, I will prioritize the person over the task. But then I'm going to get right back to those 3 things because they're sort of my drivers for the day.
Here you go. You probably already do this, but in case you don't, you want to make up a sign and give it out to the people that attend your talks. And it's formulaic. It says something to the effect of, here's the task I'm currently working on. If you really want me to get this done, and this applies to you, don't knock on my door. If you don't, but you know somebody who wants to get this done, don't knock on my door. P.S. If it's an emergency, knock on my door. I mean, I'm kind of saying it's a little bit of a joke, but the minute I thought about closed door, and I've never really liked the closed door philosophy, only because, when things need to get done, you feel like you're interrupting somebody. I had a manager that I interrupted so much, she developed a closed door policy. Jan, if you're watching, hi, how you doing? It's okay. I realize how bad it was, but that's okay. But the point is, getting back to the important person, which is you, what do you think about using a sign or something like that so that instead of just closing the door, people can put on, look, I'm working on this task right now. In other words, boom, this is what I'm doing. Because it might be important to the person knocking on the door, and then they get the chance to choose, is what I'm doing more of an emergency than that person getting that task done for me.
Well, that's really interesting. It sort of puts the employee in a place of trying to say, is my need bigger than that need? And I don't know if we should put our employees in that position, but the way I handle that is I teach them in advance what the closed door means, because I'm also a huge believer in one-to-ones with my employees regularly. So they know that they've got that hour with me fully eyeball to eyeball. I'm looking eye with them. They've got my full attention. So when they don't have that, they understand that I've got to get stuff done too for them or for the team or for other people. And by doing that balance, like spending a lot of time with your employees and focus time, it sort of alleviates all those people running to the door with that last minute, wait, I just need one signature, or I need your opinion on one thing. So that's sort of been the balance that's worked for me at work.
Yeah, and let's face it, when an employee knows he's heard, then he or she is heard. He or she is less likely to feel that need to get that signature or to do something. I know, I went through it, and then we'll get back to what to do every night, talking about that again. No, I went through it with my ex boss. She was so good at hearing me that I never knocked on her door when it was closed because
Right.
I didn't feel that need. Even if I felt the need to ask her a question, if I saw the door closed, it my need for being heard was satisfied previously, or I knew it was going to be satisfied in the very near future. So,
Right.
that's
You could save it up then. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So one thing I want to get back to real quick is when you talked about what to do every night, you talked about the fact that you will allow your brain to work on it. I talk a lot about this. I would love to hear more from your perspective and the research either you've done or you've read, and how you talk to your audiences about that, about what that really means and what goes on in your brain when you sleep.
Yeah, and I can't cite anything right off the top of my head. It's just more of a culmination of the research, but it's by anchoring stuff in your brain for tomorrow. Your brain, even though some of those might not even be a problem, but it's amazing. Like when you wake up the next morning, you're in the shower, which is where you get your best ideas, of course. It's in the shower. I'm already starting to think through. Okay, with that person, I'm going to take the discussion this way, and I don't even know where that came from. I'm just like, well, where did that happen? And I just know it's the result of your brain working on it by being planning in advance. It doesn't happen, and I just know it doesn't happen when at 6 o'clock in the morning I sit down to go, all right, how's my day going to look today? I've lost something by not having that extra 8 to 12 hours to think about it.
Yeah, well, and really, your subconscious is the most powerful
Yeah,
supercomputer on Earth. And when you're sleeping, your conscious mind doesn't have a chance to interfere with that conscious, doesn't have the
yeah.
chance to put all the fears, the blocks, and everything else in there. So it's free to think about and do. It's free to think about the problems and whatever you put in it. The whatever you put in it right before you go to bed. One last real quick question before we move on to making appointments. Do you ever get somebody complaining about, oh, if I think about something before I go to bed, I don't get to sleep at night? Do you ever have anybody complain about that?
Yeah, and I find more females than males because they're using both sides of their brain, and it's harder for gals to shut their brain off at night. I hit the pillow and I'm gone, so I just think that's a gift from God to be able to do that. But actually, I found more of my clients, because they've done it at 4:30, especially with work stuff. They've had 5 or 6 hours at home, that they're ready for bed. Their brain is not noodling on that for 6 hours. They actually can close their laptop at work and know, all right, I'm done for the day. I teach trying to have a hard stop in your day, because having
Okay.
that hard stop and saying, I've done all I can do and the day is over. Some kind of mantra that you use helps you transition from work life into home life. And there are rituals you can do in order to do that. So you keep work at work and you keep home at home.
Epic. And I'm quite sure when people reach out to you and get in contact with you, you can show them some of those rituals and mantras and teach them your very successful techniques to get it done.
Sure.
Right, Paul?
Yeah, sure.
Epic. The one thing I want to say is now I finally get it, because when you say night, you really do mean 4:30 or sometime earlier in the day. When I
Yeah.
do it, I think of like right before I go to bed. So I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up. What do you do at night? And then move into making appointments for yourself for every single task. Now, this may come as a very foreign concept to people about making appointments for yourself for every single task. So let's give them a quick overview of what we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, so what I found is everybody needs to do a brain dump of all the things on their plate. This comes from the book Getting Things Done, an epic book from David Allen. And he says, when you feel overwhelmed, you've just got to get it all out. So you need to have some place where you capture all of the stuff that you're thinking about. I got to take so-and-so to the doctor. I got to get the oil change. I got to make these 3 calls, these 3 sales calls at work. You just got to get it all out, and it's amazing what a relief it is to get it off your brain. So most people do that on a legal pad, right?
Yeah.
Some people do it electronically on their phone or some other type of productivity software. But then I look at that and I went, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I never was getting enough done because I just kept ignoring and procrastinating what was on the legal pad. So the system I use that is the only way that I am as productive as I am, and this is the number one thought that I can give, is to set appointments with yourself. So you actually take that task and you put it as a time block into your calendar. So at 9:30 in the morning, it's start up writing performance appraisal or whatever that is, and you budget a certain amount of time. And then when it comes to that time, you obey your calendar. And at 9:30, you stop whatever you're doing, stop checking email, and you start writing the performance appraisal. If you do this with all of your tasks, it looks like your whole day is completely top to bottom full, but actually a person can trump that. Someone that come with a problem could trump any of those tasks. But usually you're going to get a ton more done than if you just look at that legal pad and decide, I might do that one today.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how you say a person can trump it, because we have to realize that all this time management is great and it's very effective. However, there are still people in our lives, and when the person who has something that happens to be truly more critical than something that's on a task, we still have to be human about it. However, having tasks on your list, to me, it kind of goes back to that touchstone concept of, if the person coming to you with something comes to you with something and it's not that critical, at least you can say to them, look, I've got these 4 tasks I have to get done. I can get to it as soon as I get done with these tasks, or if I have a break in between. However, these are uber critical right now, or something, not to dismiss the person, just to let the person understand that you just can't work with them right then and there. I mean, is that how you handle it, or is there a different way you handle it?
Yeah, and that's tying back to the values and vision, to have some quick go-to statement. It sounds like you got one great one there. A go-to statement that just comes out of your mouth naturally when you're working on a high value or something that's going to get you to your vision. You don't want to blow them off. You still want to have that great customer service or employee service mentality, but you have to somehow communicate to them that, yes, I will get to that and you are super important to me, but this thing right here I have to get done right now.
Now, when it comes to making tasks or appointments with yourself for tasks every day, how do you make those appointments? Meaning, I know we talked about big rocks before, and I'm a big Eat the Frog. I talk about it in one of my books as well. Brian Tracy's great. I have a little bit of a different opinion, but it's all the same kind of concept. When you set up these appointments with yourself, is there a method that you use to be able to say what gets done at what time during the day?
Sure. So I encourage people to front load their big rocks into their schedule into the morning, because the morning is they say the most creative time of the day is between 10 and 12 in the morning. So even if you're not a morning person, the research is still playing out. Between 10 and 12 is your amped up time that you need to put these big priorities in your schedule. So I tell people to front load it in their schedule because the cumulative stress of the day will overtake you like a tsunami. You know, I like to say, I don't know where I got the quote, but it's afternoons are runaway trains. I love that quote because
Yeah.
if you keep dragging those priorities into the afternoon, then you get the customer complaint that shows up. Or then you get a call from the school that says you got to pick up your kid because they're sick. And all of a sudden you have no more day and you don't get those priorities done because it's insidious how those afternoons just sort of crowd out priorities. So if you can get them done in the front, that's great. So that's my first counsel on that. The second is to you look at the task, write performance appraisal. You overestimate how much time that's going to take. So that's going to take me an hour. So I'm going to block out 90 minutes in my schedule for that at 10 o'clock. So 10 to 11:30, it's blocked out, write performance appraisal. I color code it. And what happens is I sort of play a game with myself to get it done faster. I'm gamifying it in a way because if I can get that done in an hour and 15 minutes, I just found time. Not really, but I've got 15 minutes that I already had budgeted for something else, and now I can use the restroom. I can go down the hallway and chat with a colleague. I can get some of my Post-it notes, which I hate, that are laying all around, and I can deal with them and transfer them to my schedule. I can do those filler tasks because I've overestimated the time and I got it done sooner. So that's a couple of the little tips I give on calendaring.
Yeah, that's epic. And I would think also it helps to reduce the number of times you have to make the excuse for not getting something done. Meaning, I've been in a situation many times where, and I could never figure this out in the past. I'd always be in a situation where I'd be rushing to get to an event and somebody would call and I would always end up being late. And then I started looking at how I prioritized everything, and I realized that yes, I can always make the excuse that the phone call was what caused me to be late. But what it really was 3 tasks before that I underestimated the time. So it took me 10 minutes longer to do something, which means I started my shower 10 minutes later, which means, and all of a sudden then the person is calling me. Instead of the person calling me right as I was getting out of the shower, they're calling me right as I'm going in, so it takes me 10 minutes longer to get in, and it becomes this snowball effect. Now,
Yeah.
and I tell that story so that people can realize that it happens to everybody. But
Yep.
is that another good reason for overestimating the time and to give
Sure.
yourself that peace and to reduce the number of times you have to make the excuse that something came up or something happened to make you late?
Yeah, a couple practical things on that is shift in your calendar, like for using Outlook, move it to the 15-minute increment and not just the half hour because you need travel time to get to your next thing.
Yeah.
And this starts making you think, it's going to take me this much time to get to this next appointment. Or on the back end of a meeting, you need 15 minutes to just defrag from that meeting and send your assistant to go do something, or I've got to get something to somebody real quick. I got to fax this out. People schedule meetings at 9, 10, and 11 o'clock on the hour, and they use the whole hour. Well, what's that going to happen? It's going to happen. You're either going to be late to the next meeting, you're not going to be able to go to the bathroom. You're going to have to cut this meeting short. So I encourage people to schedule in these buffer times to just move from place to place, or I call it margin. You have to have white space or margin in your day to be able to handle those unexpected phone calls that come in or that urgent email that you just have to deal with right now. Without any buffer or margin, you're just going to not get it all done.
Yeah, exactly. And Paul, I think that's a great place to start winding down today's episode. Folks, I know after watching Paul, you realize that this guy's got his stuff together and that Paul's an epic guy and he knows how to help you learn and grow forward. And the fact that, he's mastered and conquered one of the toughest things in the world, which is time management. And it's somebody who can help you figure out and get those priorities done every day. Paul, before I give the folks the special offer we've got for them and your website, is there any last words you'd like to leave our audience with today?
It's a quote from Carl Sandburg. He says, "Time is the most valuable coin in your life. You and you alone will determine how that coin is spent. Be careful that you do not let other people spend it for you." So that's inspiring for me.
Epic. Folks, there's Paul's website, paulcasey.org. We want you to go over there right now. As soon as we're done, go over there right now. Okay, either right now or as soon as we're done, one or two, but you got to go over there. Visit paulcasey.org and sign up for Target Practice. That's Paul's tips newsletter and self and team leadership. When you do, you're going to get a free gift for opting in. That's the 11 tips to avoiding burnout. Boy, I think everybody can use that, because I know everybody has been through some form of burnout in their life, even if it's just feeling overwhelmed, maybe not full-fledged burnout. But trust me, if you haven't been through burnout, you want the 11 tips to avoid it, because it is a dark and nasty place that you don't want to get to. So, if you're just tuning in for the first time right now, check your watch next time. Please join us from the beginning. But the good news for you is you can watch us in the on-demand replay. Go back, you watch Paul's entire hero's journey, find out how a person in the school system, a teacher who became an executive in the school system, then shifted into the religious sector, and then through a dark time, ended up going through some changes, went through a divorce, and came out on the other side to help you learn and grow forward. Paul is a constant learner, somebody you need in your network, somebody you need to connect with, somebody you need to go over to paulcasey.org right now. You need to sign up for his newsletter. Take advantage of the special offer, 11 tips to avoiding burnout. And then when you're all done, if you haven't watched it, watch the episode. Watch it again, for goodness sakes. Get all the great tips and the golden nuggets that Paul has given you today. Get them, write them down, take them to note, take notes on them, take them into your heart, because they are going to change your life. And until next time, make it an epic day.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.